From across time and space and throughout the multiverse, listen as two generations of comic book readers come together to discuss a single character or event that shaped pop culture as we know it. Let Your Geek Side Show presents Then and Now with Susan and Kitty. Hi, everyone. This is Susan.
And this is Kitty.
What makes you different? No, really, we're asking. What if what made you different was that you're an Omega-Level Mutant housing in your person the spark of all life in the universe? One more question. What if you were the only being capable of not only housing it once, but over and over in a cycle of life and death? Coming to you from the Sideshow Studio in Southern California, this is Jean Grey, Then and Now.
So, the first thing that I can say after doing all of my research for this podcast, there's a lot going on with Jean Grey.
I think that's the most understated thing you've ever said on this show.
And that's the end of our podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, everybody go read Jean Grey. Bye.
I kind of lost track, but I think in the material that I covered, she's died no fewer than twice, which was just a few years. So
I mean, I liked that I was doing research on her because most of my Jean Grey is 80s and 90s. And the 90s stuff is seriously just the animated series.
Very nice.
But I loved when I was doing research was like, well, that was the third time she died.
That was the third time she died.
And then it got to the point where this is the third time she died in this series. So she kept dying and coming back. Anyway.
So I don't think, since you said you're covering 80s and 90s, and I'm pretty much covering 2012 till the present, we're not going to talk really so much about her history as Marvel Girl.
No.
That comes up a little bit in my stuff because, timelines and alternate universes.
Mine is mostly Phoenix and Dark Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
So brief history for people who may be just tuning in. I mean, I hope you're just tuning in. We just started.
Yeah.
But she was one of the original 5 X-Men. She was Marvel Girl, known for her psionic powers. Professor X, and largely in every storyline, but Professor X helps her keep those powers at bay.
Yep. She's an Omega-Level Mutant, which, by the way, is the highest level of mutant that one can be. So she's insanely powerful.
Until they come up with Omega Plus or something.
That's right. Well,
and they give everyone tertiary mutations. And
Okay, Kitty. Okay. So we're talking she's the original 5, therefore Omega was the highest.
Yes. No, I know. I'm just joking because they've got so many. I mean, there was the whole Mother Vine where they some mutants suddenly got extra powers and they're you're more of a mutant than you were before.
Well, then you have the whole Inhuman thing where that's a whole different way to mutate. And so let's just keep it to Jean Grey.
Okay. So you're going to start with the Phoenix stuff, but I pulled up the internet's scholarly definition of what the Phoenix Force itself is. Do we want to start?
I mean, you can start with that. That sounds interesting.
According to yon internet, the Phoenix Force is an immortal and immutable manifestation of the universal force of life and passion. Born in the void between states of being, the Phoenix Force is the child of the universe. Or it is a child. It is not the child. It is the nexus of all psionic energy, which does, has, and will ever exist in the Marvel multiverse. It is the guardian of creation, and it exists kind of across realities because it is that nexus.
There have been a lot of different hosts of the Phoenix Force as well. Jean just happens to be the most famous of all of them because of mostly what it does to her as a host.
Yeah.
It helps her in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it's insanely dangerous whenever she is the host of the Phoenix Force because you have the Phoenix, who basically is Jean Grey working, in a symbiotic type relationship with the entity.
It's almost like a persona she takes on.
Yes, but then you have the Dark Phoenix, which is basically when the Phoenix takes over and there's more Phoenix than there is Jean. And that is always a problem because what it does is it enhances her powers but takes away her humanity. And that makes her dangerous and her moral compass is usually compromised and therefore she hurts a lot of people that she shouldn't hurt. And when that happens, that was one of the times Jean died. And because she became self-aware of it happening and threw herself into the sun. Is that what she did?
Yeah. It was kind of I've got to stop this before it hurts. But as the name would suggest, the Phoenix is it is
can
almost
be
eternal. Like
it is eternal. It's like one of the children of the universe.
Yeah, and it is the fire of creation, but it's also the flame that will destroy the universe. Like
right.
in the Marvel mythos, like it is kind of the end and the beginning because it births things from the heat of its
right. Because Jean has been reborn via the Phoenix Force as well. So can you really be entirely mad about that relationship when it's brought you back to life and made you able to marry the love of your life? I don't know. So that's something that happened with Jean. I think that it's difficult. Like, first off, talking about Jean Grey could take forever. But what's so interesting about Jean, and this stems from my reading of her from the 80s, not in the 80s. I was too young to do that. But Jean is very, very concerned with her relationship with others. She doesn't want to hurt people. She knows how powerful she is. And so her relationship with Professor X is constantly trying to help her keep that Omega-level telepathy, telekinesis, all the things, psionic energy that she has. She's trying to keep it in check a lot of the time. And she is afraid, excuse me, of her own powers. And that's something that Jean struggles with a lot, and something that, to be honest, like if you look at her people that she's compared to, or people who have similar powers, like if you look at like Emma Frost, who is another Omega level telepath, Emma's not afraid of her powers. Emma does a lot of messed up things with her powers, and she's willing to show them off. And Jean is kind of not that. Right.
But I was like, she's either going to compare her to Emma Frost, or I think with a lot of those OG and then like second wave OG mutants, when you get that part of their origin story wherein their powers awaken as a child, and they just kind of, they learn what kind of devastation they can do to other people, my mind jumped to Jean being afraid of how, and like, because like famously she sometimes will read other people's minds without, she's trying to get better, but she will listen in on their thoughts without being
and then realize it and feel really guilty.
Rogue was the other one that I thought of because,
Rogue,
of the whole,
for sure.
Like, my powers awakened and I put a boy that I liked in a coma, kind of deal. That being afraid of your own powers when you are young. And I mean, even Emma, like it wasn't, she didn't get her powers and then just start freewheeling. Like she was like, I could use this to become a tutor. And
I think of Emma in comparison to Jean as more like what Jean could be if Jean did not have that worry about hurting people.
Yeah, she's extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, Jean and Emma serve as nice contrasts to each other, and then it makes even more interesting once Cyclops gets involved, because then you have the whole like love triangle thing, like,
and then Hellfire Club,
man, and then having psychic affairs, which is like the weirdest thing I can possibly think of, where I'm just like,
comic books, am I right?
Yeah, right. But to get back to Jean, this is Jean's podcast. Let's stick with her. Jean, I think that when you just said vulnerability, you kind of hit the nail on the head with her. She's kind of the girl next door, but with superpowers. So we don't really have a full like girl next door. I hate that term, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you
mean. In the X-Men universe. And so it turns out to be Jean most of the time, even though she's like the most powerful mutant in that universe, because Jean represents something a lot more down to earth, grounded. She does have a fear of what she is, but she also embraces what she is a lot, which I'm sure you'll talk about X-Men Red at some point.
Yeah, and I also figured you'd help me with X-Men Red.
Oh my God, X-Men Red was like...
Because the journey to get there is a little bit of a mess.
Yeah, the journey to get there. But the point of X-Men Red is that something that a lot of people, a lot of mutants miss is the power of empathy. And Jean has that, and that's so important moving forward. And she learns that by embracing the daughters of the two men that she loved in her lifetime, Laura and Rachel. And there was that beautiful storyline where she spends time with them when she thinks she's going to die. Like, it's really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, because so many people are like, ooh, I'd have the power to read minds and like listen to other people's thoughts, and that would be so fun. But you need that emotional counterweight for her, like, understand the repercussions of your actions.
Right.
You know? And when we get Emma, on the flip side, she's got that very kind of cold, detached kind of.
She's the ice queen.
She's the ice queen.
Yeah.
So we have ice and fire here going on, and
complete.
And with Jean, it is kind of like an evolution where we've got vulnerable Jean, we've got the confident Phoenix, but then we've got the taking that to the deep end with Dark Phoenix.
Right, because it's that classic story where it's like she's been afraid and she doesn't want to be afraid anymore. So this thing, the Phoenix Force, helps her not be afraid. Mm-hmm. But then what's the line? The line becomes something really, like when you're finally empowered after being vulnerable for so long, you don't have the best judgment as to where that line is, and therefore wind up taking it way too far, which is where she turned Dark Phoenix.
It's cool when you have those, and I'm trying to think of other examples, and I have one, but those like what I consider like 3-step heroes, where it's like you've got the base and you've got the secondary evolution, and then the whoops, we went a little too far, so where do you find the happy medium? The other one that immediately came to my mind was She-Hulk. You've got like incredibly quiet Jen Walters, strong and confident She-Hulk, and then when she goes off the deep end, she's savage.
Rogue.
Yeah.
You also have Rogue.
I
mean, Rogue literally absorbs all of Miss Marvel's powers at one point.
Yeah, that's true. Can't forget that.
Yeah, so Rogue's another example where like you have the base, but then she takes it a little further and then she takes it too far. And
I think there's a great richness there with the mutant characters. So I want to jump a little bit ahead. Again, there's many cycles of death and rebirth and stuff for Jean Grey.
There's a Messiah complex that happens, and man.
But for me, the biggest one, and I will maybe do my best by the end of this to speak a little to the movies as well, because we very notably have the Dark Phoenix movie coming up. But the comics, I think, is a good line to follow here, because in 2012, we kind of had the all-new Age of Marvel, I guess it was Marvel Now. All new, and then there was all new, all different. Oh my goodness! So
stop renumbering things.
And then the still new and still different. So Brian Michael Bendis, all new X-Men 2012. Jean is dead, and a time displaced Marvel Girl. So she was Marvel Girl at this point, is brought to the future along with some of the other original X-Men as they were younger, to kind of show the adult Cyclops how far he'd fallen. This was at the point where he's got the black costume with the X eyes and stuff. And it was kind of like hey, remember where like these are the young mutants that you've fought alongside the adult versions of them now, but this is what started it all. So time displaced Marvel Girl stays in the present with some of her teammates, and she was younger, more inexperienced, and she would still read minds without permission. And this is where we got the very strangely famous, controversial Jean Grey outed Bobby Drake without his knowing it.
I remember that.
Yes.
Oh, wow. I'd totally forgotten about that.
This is 7 years ago now.
Oh, man.
She was, it might have been 6 years ago because the series went on, but she read his mind and could tell that he was gay, and she outed him before he even himself, like, was admitting it to himself. Which was, so that it was a very weird example of, like, she's so naive and inexperienced and reads minds without permission, and it was a way to show how kind of undisciplined she was.
Yeah.
And while it was controversial at the time, it did lead to a good series written by Sina Grace about Iceman, kind of embracing that representation. Yeah. But you really got to see, like, this is how we're choosing to express that this Marvel Girl is really just kind of out of touch, and she's in a totally different timeline. She has a really cute costume designed by Jamie McKelvey.
Yeah, she has a way cute costume.
Thank you, Jamie McKelvey, for once again. I mean, we covered this in a previous podcast. He was responsible for modern Captain Marvel's design. He was responsible for the young Jean Grey outfit that eventually, when she did her solo series, was there. But it's interesting because this was a universe without a Jean. So our Marvel Girl here, yeah, this is where it gets weird. Marvel Girl's from an alternate universe, but this one, Jean had died. So the Phoenix Force was out and just kind of biding its time. So Jean Grey was kidnapped and put on trial by the Shi'ar people for crimes that adult Jean committed. But she's like, dude, I haven't done that yet. I'm just Marvel Girl from another universe. But she learns kind of about her fate and like, oh my God, this is what the Phoenix Force does to me and does to other people. And then the Phoenix Force showed up in Thor, and then Quentin Quire got his hands on some of it. So it's like, as 616's Jean Grey was gone, like pieces of the Phoenix started to spread out everywhere. But so we've got young Jean Grey who kind of understands like, oh shoot, this is what's going to happen to me, and I don't want that to happen, and it's kind of scary. And so she got a solo series, and it was kind of about can you outrun the Phoenix? Can you outrun your destiny? And it was actually it was pretty cool. It ran for 11 issues, and I want to say the writer was Dennis Hopeless, and I feel really bad. I can't remember who the artist was. I just know that Jamie McKelvey designed the costume. But this series also, like, I think one of the strengths of seeing young Marvel Girl kind of displaced and replanted into the present moment is that we see that she is a lot stronger than a lot of people gave her credit for initially. Like, we know now, like, seeing Phoenix and Dark Phoenix, we're like, yeah, duh, she's an Omega-level mutant. But this depiction of young Jean, it kind of gave old Marvel Girl stuff a little more nuance, and like, she had a little bit more depth than most people gave her credit for. Because also, doing my research for this podcast, especially around the time of X-Men the Animated Series, a lot of people have just famously been like, Jean Grey is useless. Like, Jean Grey. The Phoenix isn't necessarily useless.
I grew up with people telling me that.
Jean Grey is useless.
Besides, like, if you watch the animated series, it was like a nuh-uh. Like, Jean Grey does this in the animated series. But if you walked into a comic book store, that's what people were saying.
And that's, it's just like...
Because she was just there.
She
on
was
the team.
the girl. She was the girl. She was the Marvel Girl.
Yeah.
But dude, you don't disrespect the Omega-level mutant who...
And the thing is that I actually took a really long time to get over that notion, because it was the stuff of like when I was younger until X-Men Red.
Yeah, and admittedly, it also took until some of these later stories where they're like, hey, we're gonna give Jean some more depth and stuff to do. But she's never been useless. I think she's been underutilized in a way, but it also has to do with the fact that she herself as a character holds herself back.
To be fair, like, if you want to talk about like useless, like, let's talk about Cyclops for a second. Like, anyway,
we'll cover Scott Summers in a different podcast.
No, because that would be nothing. It would be like, oh my God, Scott Summers has conflict. Well, yeah, you all do.
He's really angsty, and he's gonna shoot an I-beam into the sky about it.
Yeah, no, that's every Scott Summers story. Anyway, but this is Jean's podcast, so again, back to Jean.
Right.
X-Men Red, written by Tom Taylor. Shout out to Tom. Hopefully you survived your scary cabin.
Yeah, he's dealing with a murder cabin in Australia right now on a writing retreat. So
good luck to that.
But so going back to like underutilizing Jean, proving she's more than now, proving but that she's not useless.
I don't think you could have proved that she was not useless in X-Men Red if you didn't have that Marvel Girl storyline ahead of that. Because if you don't have that and you don't have her solo series, you can't have her lead a brand new team of X-Men who, by the way, this is kind of like one of the cooler teams that has ever been put together. Just saying, in my opinion, it's like Jean, Namor, Trinary, who's like this mutant who can talk to machines.
She's a technopath.
Yeah, and then Gentle, who's a Wakandan mutant, which, come on. Then you have Honey Badger and X-23. Duh. Who, by the way, the whole empathy storyline hinges on Honey Badger, because Honey Badger is a 9-year-old clone of Laura Kinney, Gabby Kinney, one of the survivors of the X-23 program, the only surviving sister. But she asks Jean, like, what makes the difference between, like, if you, because Cassandra Nova has implanted people with these notions because she can implant thoughts and thoughts that consume. She implants thoughts that mutants are bad and to kill mutants. So even people in the government who are pro-mutant are now just assassinating mutants. And she's managed to also infiltrate the media so that everyone thinks the person behind this is Jean Grey. And Jean just came, I was going to say, adult Jean just came back to life and was like, hey guys, what I missed? Like, yeah, what did I miss? Oh crap, now I'm, a criminal. So she has to like basically take refuge in Atlantis with Namor. And the Atlanteans all are fighting her army, but Gabby is like, well, what is essentially asks her, what is the difference between you and her? Like, you're both Omega-level mutants. You both have all these powers. You both
There's a lot of Omega-level telepaths running around.
There are. And that's really scary. But Gabby essentially is like, what's the difference? Like you could easily be her. So like what makes you you? And that's a really epic question to ask a character who spent most of her existence being like the one that's there and the one that exists and the one that's afraid.
Or
and
the one that's dead again.
Yeah. Like, so to have this new character, invented by Tom Taylor, exist and ask Jean what makes you different is such a great question to ask this character who's been around since the 60s and has never really been asked that.
And yes, and so we joke that there's a lot of Omega level telepaths running around, but what makes the difference? It's the fact that you're not only able to read minds, but then you also know what other people are feeling, and you can process that. And it was so fabulous because even if I love her, even if X-23 had asked that question, which doesn't seem like a question she would ask.
No, it isn't.
Because she's an experienced, she's been around a lot of these mutants.
She also has way too much Logan in her to ask that question.
Right, and a lot of these mutants already know, like, people just hate us, and that's just the way this is always going to be. To have a child with that childlike innocence ask that question is fantastic, and I think that also plays nicely on the fact that we had the child Jean Grey leading up to this. And like, so
that's, again, what I was saying is I don't think we could have had that moment without Brian Michael Bendis' story, bringing back Marvel Girl, the impact and the trial of Jean Grey, like, and then having her take over her own series. Like, you can't.
And I didn't mention the ending of the Dennis Hopeless solo series, which was really interesting because, she spends the whole 11 issues like, I don't want to become this. It's going to hurt so many people, and I don't know if I can control it because I am still this teenage girl who uses Xavier's own powers to kind of diminish my own. She confronts the Phoenix Force at the end because she finds out, she's like, it's coming for me. Like, it's because I'm the Jean Grey in this universe now. But, she confronts the Phoenix Force and is like, okay, like, I'm going to take control and you're not going to harm all these people like you've done before. And the Phoenix Force tells her, I'm not coming after you. You're not my Jean Grey. Even though the Phoenix Force exists in all these universes, it's like, I want the Jean that's dead, and you're standing in the way of her coming back. And so this young Jean Grey stands in the way of the Phoenix Force. It burns her to death, and from that death, adult Jean Grey comes back to life, and then we get X-Men Red. So, but the fact that this version of Jean Grey, even if she was from a different time, she had spent enough time in that universe to say, I've seen what the Phoenix Force has done, and it's been so devastating to so many people. I'm not going to let that happen again. And then the Phoenix Force is like, well, you don't have a say in the matter. I'm bringing back the other Jean Grey. But we get the other Jean Grey who is also like, I'm going to use my power of empathy.
Yeah. Because that is what makes the difference.
Yeah.
That's what makes the difference. That's why I can make these decisions that other Omega levels don't. That's why I'm not cold. That's why I'm not controlling.
I'm not the one who's got a heart of diamond. I'm the one imbued with the literal force of passion as a flaming bird.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's really cool. And so it may have taken a lot of deaths and rebirths to start really like crystallizing, like, these are the, I mean, she's been around for so long, so I can't say it's just now happening in comics, but getting these big broad strokes of like, no, this is what Jean Grey is.
But the thing is, she's been around for a while, but this is like a golden era of Jean because she's not just dying.
Yeah.
She's
not just there, she's leading.
Yeah. That's a whole different Jean than I grew up with. Jean just, got too powerful and then had to be taken down. Like there was like a cycle to it.
Yeah, or got too powerful, so she had to take herself out of the equation.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really kind of full circle and also a little bit Phoenix, like to have her reborn in a way where she understands what makes her different, and that's a power that she has, not a weakness that eventually takes her down. So this is a great character to be able to talk about in a podcast like this because of how much she has changed since she started.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean...
And I think the last thing we haven't really touched on, which I don't have a whole lot of experience actually with the older X-Men films personally.
Really?
But I saw anyone that was like Wolverine titled, but I didn't see like Last Stand or anything.
That's okay.
Yeah, so
I was like, you can see X2, X-Men United, because you also get Banff, Because Nightcrawler's
I love
in that
Nightcrawler.
one. Oh my God.
He's one of my favorites.
He's one of my favorites too.
But
there's also the first hint of the Phoenix in that one. You definitely do see Famke Janssen, who, by the way, I did really enjoy as Jean Grey in those initial X-Men movies. She did portray the character as like scared but powerful, and that's important because you have to have both elements of Jean. She has to be scared of what she can do, but also step up when she needs to. And The Last Stand, take it or leave it, is a telling of the Phoenix story.
Well, and now we've got Simon Kinberg's own Phoenix story here, because now he's taking the helm of Dark Phoenix, which is set to come out this summer.
Yep.
Can't really comment a whole lot about it. We've seen some trailers, but really, I mean, we know the plot.
Yeah.
Essentially, because it is the Dark Phoenix saga, but
still, I say, if you want to really watch the Dark Phoenix saga, check out X-Men, the animated series. That's still the best way it's ever been told.
And so I mean, I can't comment too much about it, but we did get introduced to Sophie Turner as Jean Grey in X-Men Apocalypse.
An excellent job.
She did a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean, again, take what you want out of that movie, but like Sophie Turner was a highlight of that entire film.
Yes, and we do get that Jean, who is younger. She's teenaged.
Who's afraid of her powers.
She's afraid of her powers. She's learning from Xavier. She's still one of like the star students there.
Yeah. But watch her step up when Professor X's life is on the line at the end.
And it's fabulous. I think she's a great example because we also see that type of character from her so powerfully in like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Because we've got
Sansa basically does the same thing.
And we get to see a young woman who has a dark side and
She's been through some stuff.
She's been through some stuff, and she just wants to live a normal life, but the dark side emerges when circumstances beyond her control dictate that she can't have that normal life. Yeah. And so Simon Kinberg he wrote Last Stand, I believe, but now he's directing Dark Phoenix, and he promised that if he got a chance to retell the Dark Phoenix saga, he wouldn't do it the same way. So we will hopefully see a new iteration of the same story. We'll see how it goes.
I mean, to be fair, Last Stand isn't actually the Dark Phoenix saga.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I feel like this is definitely going to be closer to the actual Phoenix saga.
Yes, because also Last Stand adapted Joss Whedon's Gifted, and so that was a couple of dueling storylines in there. But this one is set to release June 7th, 2019. It's all Dark Phoenix, and Sophie Turner said she studied dissociative identity disorder for the film because we will be seeing that vulnerable Jean, too confident Phoenix.
That's awesome.
So we'll just see how it goes. I mean, she is a fantastic
She's a fantastic
person to play
actress.
the character.
Yeah, I really dig her as Jean Grey.
So it'll be interesting. I mean, because we do have all these cycles of death and rebirth for Jean Phoenix. Jesus.
I mean,
Jean Grey.
That's what
Phoenix.
she should be called at this point.
Jean Phoenix.
I like that now Wikipedia actually like hyphenates her name. It's like Jean Grey Summers, and I'm like, no.
I love that when you start. Side note: Jessica Jones's page is Jessica Campbell Jones Cage, and I'm just like, no, get out of here with that.
No. That's like not how it works. She's Jean Grey, and I appreciate that the marriage to Cyclops, but there's no need. She doesn't need to change her name.
But yeah, so we'll just keep seeing these cycles of her story, and with every subsequent reappearance of the Phoenix, it just seems to get stronger and stronger as storytelling and her character itself. So it's cool to see where it'll go, and I'm interested to see where Dark Phoenix takes that.
Awesome. So if you were to recommend some comics to pick up.
I didn't grab the title names of the volumes, but it's the Jean Grey Volume 1 and Jean Grey Volume 2. I believe the series started in 2017. Definitely X-Men Red.
Definitely X-Men Red.
There's also 2 volumes.
Yeah, it should be because it was also 11 issues.
Yes.
So the first trade is already out. Is the second one yet? I don't know.
It should be.
It should be, but I don't know that it is. Okay. I know that I have the first one.
Hopefully by the time you guys listen to this, just check your local comic book store. But X-Men Red, definitely. And then if you're interested, you can check out some of Bendis's all new X-Men. But I think the more quintessential stuff is the later Jean Grey solo series and X-Men Red for the modern stuff.
And then for the stuff in the past, the then side of the spectrum, I would say definitely pick up anything by Chris Claremont from the 80s, especially the early 80s where Jean's actually doing stuff. I would actually pick up. No, I mean, they didn't do a whole lot with her. Right. So I would pick those up. I would pick up anything with that has the There's the Phoenix Saga and the Dark Phoenix Saga. Those are two different things. Or just watch X-Men the Animated Series because those are some really good episodes that tell the story really well.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with the storytelling in those.
All right. Whether she's the girl next door, Ick, or the leader of her own team, one thing has always made Jean Grey stand out: her empathy. Jean might be an Omega-Level mutant, but her level of care for the well-being of others is what makes her the perfect person to take humanity to the next evolution. Do you have a character that you'd like to hear discussed in this podcast? Shoot us an email at podcasts@geeksideshow.com. Thank you for listening. This has been Jean Grey, Then and Now. Do you enjoy listening to Then and Now? We are proud to bring you pop culture content completely ad-free, but that doesn't mean we don't need your support to help us keep going. Please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform and help spread the word about our podcast. We welcome fan feedback. Email us at podcasts@sideshow.com with your thoughts and suggestions for how we can make our shows even better. Please tune in for our other pop culture podcasts. See if your fan favorites make the cut in the Geek Culture Countdown, a bi-weekly podcast featuring pop culture top 10 lists. Hear exclusive interviews with celebrities and pop culture industry leaders as they let their geek side show in Look Who Showed Up. Then get all the latest pop culture news with our daily briefing, a 2-minute breakdown of the biggest geek headlines perfect for your Alexa or Google News briefings. We wouldn't exist without your continued support. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to let your geek side show.